All right. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be. And welcome to a most festive LinkedIn Live discussion brought to you by Optiv, the cyber advisory and solutions leader. My name is Max Shire. I'm the Chief Information Security Officer for Optiv. And first, we here at Optiv would like to wish you and yours the happiest of holiday seasons. Thank you for joining us today to discuss how we can keep your organization secure during what is, we hope, the most wonderful time of the year. Please drop any comments or questions you have during our discussion in the chat. We'll do our best to get to them in real time or at the end of the discussion. So now to the topic of today's LinkedIn Live session. So unfortunately, there are bad actors out there who bank on security teams coasting into the new year. It's a harsh reality of our world. Still, there are steps and actions that we can take to better protect your business, not only for now, but also for the future. Here with me to discuss this is Jennifer Mahoney, who works hand in hand with Optiv clients to deliver world-class data privacy and governance solutions, and
Good
Sean
morning.
Tufts,
Thanks,
who
Max.
leads Optiv's industrial control systems, operational technology, and IoT security practice. Sorry about that, Jennifer. Good morning, Sean.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
All right. Well, thank you for both for coming and joining me in this discussion. And first, let's start with what some out there may be wondering. Is it too late to get to your organization's privacy and or security posture in place during this holiday season? So let's start with Sean, and then we'll move over to Jennifer on this first question. What are your key 2 to 3 security measures organizations can take now to secure their assets? Sean?
Yeah, great question. There's a lot you can do. Obviously, not going to roll out some big new firewall across 3,000 sites, right? That's not in scope. But finding those little tweaks and tunes that you can take on, right? Going out and finding what your major tool sets are and doing a quick health check inside of it. Pop open that tool, do all the the little privacy things that you weren't thinking about, the little tweaks and tunes that you kind of put off for the year. Now's the time to do some of those little tweaks. Other simple things. We were at a client site last month, and we were asked about incident response plans, and they're like, and we asked them where they stored it. That was the trick. They're like, yeah, we store that in SharePoint, and we're like, oh, the thing we're trying to protect and hope doesn't get ransomware. Do you put the solution to ransomware inside of? So we encourage them, hey, go to FedEx, print all those out, make sure that's a hard copy you can have access to, and be able to action on quickly. All those little things that you've been putting off now's the time to go do.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And I think just to add too, and I think making sure that your vulnerability management program is up to date too. Now's a good time to catch up on those things that you really didn't have a chance to do before. And Sean, to your point, don't roll out any major new initiatives during the holiday season when half the team's out, right? Jennifer, what would you like to add to that?
Well, somebody needs to tell the regulators not to roll out new initiatives at the end of the year. Um,
They don't
because for, for those of you listening from the state of Utah, the Utah Consumer Privacy Act goes into effect December 31st. So you are probably in the throes of aligning your processes, your data subject access request process, and upskilling your customer service teams and things like that to prepare for that effective go live here at the end of the year. And I swear it's every year somebody somewhere in the privacy world has enacted or goes effective with something. But it's Utah this year, and hopefully most companies these days when these regulations apply to you, you are already doing business in some of the other states that have similar legislations, California, Virginia, et cetera. I think we've got this is now 6 states that this applies to. So you've probably got some pretty good processes already in place, but it's a great time to double check and make sure that things are working as you expect them to be.
Yeah, agreed. And what do you think? A lot of companies are now looking at AI and their policies regarding AI. Do you have any comments or guidance in that regard?
Yeah, this time of year is there's an increase in everything, right? Threats, hackers are more active, scams are more active, And AI can really accelerate some of those potential threats. The emails that we receive trying to fish for information are more finely tuned with hackers having access to AI. The ability to clone voices and make phone calls to request information that the bad guys shouldn't be receiving are augmented by AI. So now's a really great time to reinforce your corporate policy, the stance that you are currently in with respect to artificial intelligence and machine learning tools, and for being on the lookout to any shadow AI going on in the company, folks that are trying to squeeze things in before the end of the year, be more productive before the end of the year, and maybe going a little bit outside the lines to use some tools that they maybe shouldn't be using. Just want to be aware of all those things, and reinforcement of current state this is a great opportunity for that.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I think, obviously the security operations teams may be actually an opportunity right now to look at your DLP policies to see how you're protecting the
Absolutely.
information that's being used in Gen AI. And, and if you don't have tools in place, maybe now is a good opportunity to go look at those tools. And
Mhm.
speaking of tools, Sean, what tools or solutions could be readily available to teams that they can incorporate now?
Perfect question. Every security org has kind of 4 or 5 of their prime tools. You mentioned DLP Max, a critical piece, especially in the holidays when you're trying to track where documents are going. A big time for employee shift when you've got employees moving on to other jobs and making sure they're not taking all the intellectual property with them, because that's going to happen in that December to January handoff. I think looking at those 4 or 5 prime tools, your endpoint, your firewall, your SIM, DLP, CASB, all of those are in a good spot because, again, you're not going to do a big major rollout of a new program, but taking a moment to make sure they're all integrated together, making sure all the policies and configurations you want to be deploying are, making sure we're sending syslogs to our SIM, and all those little fine-tuning parts. Now's the season to do that, assuming they can operate within your change windows. I can think of firewalls, right? All of our firewall vendors have a quick best practice assessment. Palo actually calls it best practice assessment. I think Optiv has 450 people that can do that service. Checkpoint has theirs, Juniper theirs, Fortinet theirs. All of those little opportunities to do a quick pulse on what's the health of this tool? How's it doing today? Are we missing any major milestones? Are we not covering individual segments? Now's the time to do some of those maintenance things that you've been putting off.
And
Yeah, I
Sean, you
absolutely agree with
mentioned,
you. Go ahead, Jennifer.
sorry, Max. Sean, you
No, that's
mentioned
all right.
making sure that folks aren't taking information with them when they leave. Now is also a time of year when folks change jobs. January 1, a new role in the same company starts. Reinforce that access governance policy that you have in place to ensure that the new access is in place and the old access that folks no longer need is turned off as well. Just keeping things internal and that internal hygiene at the same time.
Yeah, and I was going to mention, and that's a great point, Jennifer, and Sean, you brought up a good point too with the cyber hygiene. Now is a good time to get caught up on those things, as we mentioned before. Did you do those account reviews for maybe accesses that you did not remove for people that have left the company, or are no longer in roles that require that type of access? So access reviews, firewall reviews, those quarterly things that you should have done throughout the year that maybe you were behind on. Now is a great time to catch up on those types of things. But
The best
Sean, you had
excuse
mentioned.
too? Max, the
Sorry,
best
go ahead.
excuse there? Block off your calendar, say, hey, Q4 slammed, I'm busy in year-end planning, or put a big calendar block that says like management hold or something, right? No one will question that this time of year. And block off
That's
3
right.
or 4 days to go do some of that work, have a cup of
Yes.
coffee, lie to everybody you know, say you're slammed with Q4, and go do some of that hygiene. I can't tell you I've done that, but I maybe have.
Yeah, no, and that's a great opportunity to get that stuff done. And to your point, yeah, block off the time, right? And make sure that you dedicate the time to go do that. But you had mentioned integration of cybersecurity tools, and we've been talking about this a lot with tech rationalization lately. And in fact, in the last couple of sessions that I've done in LinkedIn Lives, et cetera, we talked about tech rationalization and integration of security tools. And what do you think, Sean? What's working in concert rather than isolation is extremely important when we talk about tech rationalization and the integration of tools. Do you have some thoughts on that?
Yeah, we run into a lot of clients. I would say more than 50% haven't fully utilized the compare and contrast that can happen within tools. All too often, we have an endpoint team and a network team, and we keep them siloed. And sometimes they don't like to talk to each other, which is really hard, but that's a political hurdle for another day. Um, Starting to federate those things into each other and forcing those relationships to start to foster, whether it's through a simple API or a webhook, or even actually just getting those teams into a Zoom window and having that conversation and starting to connect those tools, in my view, is the best tool we have. We've seen crazy things like network teams have, firewall fights where one brand has one, or one group has one and one has a different brand just for spite. Now's the time to knock a lot of those political fiefdoms down and to start having one pane of glass that is your security and IT backbone. And I think the last 3 or 4 years through tech rationalization, people are finding ways to reduce spend and increase efficiency by having better collaboration tools.
Yeah, absolutely agree. And it's interesting. We're going through that tech rationalization exercise right now on my team, where we have a list of our security tools. What logs are we getting? Does it make sense that we're getting those logs? What logs maybe we're not getting? And then closing the loop on those, on how well are those logs integrated into our ticketing system, right? Are we generating incidents from those? How well is our integration of the tools that we have in all of our SaaS applications? Do we even have the capability of getting logs? I think that's a valid question too. And then closing the loop on those to generate the security incidents that make sense, right? And so I think it's a very important exercise to inventory those out and then see how your integration is going. And when you do bring on new tools, making sure that you do close the loop on those. Next question though, from a privacy perspective, what are the things we should be keeping top of mind right now? Sean.
From a privacy perspective, right now, I'm thinking about where I'm shopping. There are a lot of places to go. My wife and I were filling our Amazon cart up for our kids. And shopping is an interesting thing. Number one, I probably shouldn't be doing it from my corporate machine, but I am. That's reality. Number two, I'm researching what I'm picking up. Amazon is a great place, but it also is fraught with things. We're looking up, make sure my kids aren't listening. We're looking up a 50cc dirt bike. And you know what? In Amazon, there's a lot of vendors from a lot of places that I don't recognize inside that kiosk. And taking the time, the moment to pull back and saying, hey, is this a reliable vendor? I've never heard of this ABC XYZ company. I want to go research that. And doing a little diligence and getting one step past that. Because you know what? Even the dirt bikes nowadays are smart dirt bikes, and they want to log in and they want you to have your credentials inside of whatever tool you want. Stick with what you know. For me, I'm sticking to Yamaha, I'm sticking to Polaris, I'm sticking to those known brands that are going to give me what I want. And I might take the extra effort to go shop on their site directly, as opposed to getting it from some third party, from some third place. So that's what I'm thinking about.
Yeah, and like you said, Sean, even if you're sticking with the Yamaha and the Polaris brands, make sure you're on their storefront in Amazon versus those third parties. And as we're doing research on the privacy implications of the Christmas gifts or the holiday gifts, Happy Hanukkah to those that are celebrating now, the Mozilla Foundation publishes a buyer's guide every year called Privacy Not Included. And instead of batteries not included, and the site reviews a number of products that are hot for the year, product categories that are hot for the year, and there are a lot of smart things in there this year about just looking at the policies and the data that they're collecting, who they're sharing data with, and why. These are all things that we should be thinking about as we're making our product selections. I'm in the market. My husband's not home right now, so I can talk freely about the fact that I'm in a market for a new TV. And he was looking to fill a wall with a much larger TV than will actually fit at the moment. So we're in some discussions there, but there are a lot of things that introduces with those smart TV streaming services and things like that this time of year. And one of the other things, just from an internal perspective, a company perspective, and this applies in our personal lives as well. verify the links and the phone numbers and the contact information for the emails that we receive, the phone calls that we get, and whenever possible, go directly to the source, like Sean said. Don't click the link in the email. If you have a message from your bank that there's a suspicious transaction, go directly to your bank site or call your bank directly, versus the links that are in the email and things like that, just to make sure that kind of extra layer of caution before we click on something we didn't mean to, or invite a bad actor into our environment.
I did that this morning, actually. High net worth individual, is close, is a public figure as well. And this morning we walked through and said, hey, here's where to find your settings inside of Facebook. Here's where to add that 2FA piece. Here's where to look at your logins that have been happening inside your Gmail pane. And walking through and doing those kind of personal exercises, I forgot I hadn't set things up. I didn't have backup emails stored inside some of those tools. Taking a moment to go do that work, and on your personal side as well, is holiday season is a good time to do that as well.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you both on that. And in fact, you mentioned doing a personal review of the accounts that you have. And, I think it's important for us to recognize that sometimes it's been a while since we've reviewed our own settings on our own sites, to your point, Sean. So, use password managers, check your Chrome plugins, and making sure that everything is still valid, and remove those that maybe no longer apply to what you're doing. And, and ultimately have a plan, stick to it, and just make sure that you do regular reviews of your security posture on your own accounts, right?
Yeah, we need to clean up after ourselves real quick, Max.
Yeah.
Cleaning up on ourselves, as it's the end of the year. Maybe we're switching vendors or switching providers, bought a new product, and we're decommissioning a product in our own homes. You clean up your trail with the company that you're no longer needing to do business with, right? Close your account, request them to delete your information, things like that. Apply the same hygiene things that we do in our professional life to our personal life.
Yeah, and there's actually several services that can help you clean up those accounts that you're no longer using. So, definitely something to look into. So moving back to what businesses can do. Normally the holidays typically leave IT or SOC staff with shortages, just due to everybody taking vacation or taking leave. What steps can these teams take to ensure cyber resiliency? And we touched upon this a little bit earlier. Sean, what are your thoughts on that?
Communication's everything for those teams. Understanding, because we all have personal time, we all have families to support, we all have connections, events we want to do. Understanding what those big events are, who has young children, who's going on a cruise, where people are going to be. I think the other big piece of that is starting to map and create the redundancy, which is a good thing in this case. The redundancies and skill sets, understanding who has the right activity for the right group, putting those into pods, making sure those pods know when each other is offline, online. I have young kids. Christmas morning, I'm out. And I know I have to find a backfill for someone on my team who isn't in that situation. And the other part of this too, because we don't just get a pass because we have kids, right? Finding ways where I can extend that same piece. So for my employee that doesn't have kids, he goes on cruises and he leaves everything on shore and he just disappears. And we got to make sure we know what those gives and trades are and that we're making accommodations for both parties.
Yeah, and I think I think you make actually a good point, right? So if you don't have redundant skill sets and you are a single point of failure, how can the team notify you too if you're going to be on call? And have a plan, I think, is the most important piece there. Communicate, have a plan, and make sure that you're set up for success when you are on the holidays and the team is out. So similarly, we know that employees are the weakest link in an org's cybersecurity. And I think, that seems to be a recurring theme regardless of the attacks, right? How do you create a cyber ready mindset or culture where employees keep security at the top of the mind during the holidays? Jennifer, you want to kick us off on that?
Sure. This is also a time of year when we might be utilizing seasonal help. whatever industry, retail industry in particular, delivery, all those, Amazon and UPS and USPS and everything else, drivers that keep everything running all year, but especially this time of year, boosting the staff. Those folks might not have had the training and the exposure to your cyber awareness messaging campaigns that you're running all year round. Here at Optiv, we did our training, I think, in October this year for privacy and security.
Yep.
Now's a great time to maybe send a few reminders, right? Launch a little bit of a campaign. Make sure you're reaching those seasonal individuals. Maybe they don't have access to the typical computer systems. They're not on company email. In your daily stand-up call, have a little security tip that just kind of keeps things in their minds to practice and reflect the company hygiene culture and security and privacy awareness topics that you've been talking about all year, and kind of hit those new faces and new voices as well.
Yeah, that's a great point. And honestly, it's me being CISO for Optiv. I forget sometimes that the retailers have a significant portion of their workforce brought in over the holidays. And Jennifer, so you make a great point there that it's important for them to get the same type of security training. Excuse my lights there. The same type of security training that everybody else does, and it does not hurt to send out a reminder to all the rest of the employees, whether it be a brown bag lunch or get face to face with folks, or send out even just a newsletter or a reminder prior to the holidays that, hey, here's some things to look out for. And Sean, do you have tips on maybe some of the gifts that people may be getting and maybe some reminders related to those?
Yeah, and actually I want to touch on something on the seasonal employee piece. A lot of our clients thrust into the national spotlight's been distribution centers. So every product you have will go through a warehouse somewhere in LA or New York or somewhere and be put on a truck. We're starting to see the growth in new devices there. And what that means is we have one client who's got, I think they said they could go to the moon on back on conveyor belts. That's how much they have.
Wow.
They're growing from, I think it's like 5 or 6 sensors per square meter. And I'm an American, so I don't know what a square meter is, but they're going to 1,000 per square meter. They're tracking where those boxes are going. What do they weigh? What's their tracking number? What's their shape? What are their dimensions? They're taking in all that data and starting to consume it. And for us, that's hard from a security perspective, because we're going to then, whatever escalation path that is, that's that many more devices in the environment. Jennifer brought up smart TVs earlier. We have a client who they found 10 smart TVs on and streaming video to an unknown North Korean location, IP address. So we are finding these new devices. And for the IoT world, it's all about asset inventory. Understanding how big your attack surface is no longer Windows and data centers and Linux machines. It's now these little bugger cameras and TVs with no security controls in them and outdated passwords and firmware. That's our new attack surface. So for a lot of what we do in this critical infrastructure and IoT world, it's all about asset inventory, knowing how big you are. You don't want to have happen, which we had with a client recently, where someone said, hey, how exposed are we to this Chinese camera that just got blacklisted by the US government? We don't know. And we don't know how many we have. How are we going to find it? We don't know that either. Okay. So they're sending a person door to door with a camera to take pictures, and that's not quite the best practice. So for us going into 2024, we're really trying to prep how to grow out that attack surface and how to know where your boundaries are.
Yeah, Sean, and it's interesting that you talk about inventory, because the same can be applied to your house too, right? Your home router can take an inventory of what's currently on your network, and it probably makes sense to log in and take a check and see what you have. I was actually quite surprised on some of the stuff that was showing up on my inventory.
Yeah, your standard Linksys router, you can pull that GUI up. Not a lot of people do, because once you set it and forget it, you go away from it. You never think about that again. But yeah, finding how many devices are online in your own home and the old laptops and the old things you have that are still checking in every now and then. I do that probably, I'd say I'm going to do it once a quarter. I'm lying to you. I do it once a year. And you're right. You find little devices. You don't know where they're. Little TVs are plugged in. Yeah, they're all there.
Yeah, yeah, I turn my notifications on for whenever I need an update or a firmware update, and I do an inventory check, and it's amazing just how many devices show up on there, especially after Christmas when your kids are bringing up all their new toys online.
Yeah, and I gotta coach my mom. She keeps buying them presents from the middle of nowhere, and every one of them wants a QR code, and every one of them wants you to register on their device. And we just had to start saying no. No, we're not taking on this $5 thing you bought at this unknown location. We're not doing that this year, Mom.
So it looks like we lost Jennifer. Hopefully she'll come back online. But Sean, we were talking about internally for companies and organizations and what they need to be aware of and what they can do during the holiday season. What do you find are some of the internal vulnerabilities that maybe organizations need to be aware of?
Now's the time for me. Internal vulnerabilities, that's a big topic because the CVE world grows this time of year. For me, that one's hard to take on. For me, it's a lot around physical security and taking this time to reach out to those physical security teams and having those conversations. We did an effort here at our home, and it was fun. It was a work project, but we ended up turning on an IP camera, and in our chicken coop of all things, we whitelisted one kid and denied listed another kid that were going into the chicken coop. For me, it was a good exercise to understand who was where and how much more data we can bring in. Physical security is a new realm. If you've got an employee that's being termed or one that's threatening, now's the time to connect and see what they're doing from an asset inventory perspective, from a physical security perspective, and understanding what they have access to and bridging that gap. Right now, physical security teams and cyber teams are different, but we should be managing those workloads in a similar way. I would love to know when a fired employee is coming on to site, especially when we have a distribution center that goes from 2 employees to 2,000 overnight, and we don't know where all those people are coming from. Having better grasp on our edges there is going to be a big part of the next 5 years, and we can start laying some of those seeds today.
Yeah, agreed. Jennifer, welcome back. We were talking about what internal vulnerabilities do organizations need to be aware of, and would love to hear your input on this one.
Well, and I think we've already talked about a lot of it, right? Our people are our biggest asset. They're also our weakest link. So, ensuring that individuals are being reminded of policies and standard operating procedures, that we have backups in place. We have printed documentation of the critical things, that incident response policy. I used to work in the chemical sector, and we had to have our safety information in binders by law, because when there's an emergency and you turn off the power so that the tank doesn't ignite, a fire doesn't spread, things like that, you still need to have access to the safety information so that you can respond appropriately. And it's the exact same thing in the cyber world, right? Making sure that with all of these tools that we have and all of the interconnectedness that we need and collaboration that we need, that we have fail safes in place too. And sometimes that's the manual printed hard copy things that can help us get through tough times.
Yeah, that's a great point. All right. So we talked about internal vulnerabilities. Likewise, can both of you discuss some of the biggest or most worrisome external threats maybe enterprises face and how they should be addressing them? Why don't we start off with Sean?
Yeah, external threats are tricky, especially now. We didn't touch on identity yet much today, which is actually a surprise. But from a threat actor perspective, number one, now is a time when all of our employees move. Everybody's going to pick up and go to a different location sometime in the next 5 weeks, whether that's going from work from home to somewhere else, to another location, to the mountains in Wyoming or the beach in Connecticut. The beaches in Connecticut, that might show you where I'm going. Now's the time when all those people get up and move. So I think from a operations perspective, your insider threat, which Jennifer touched on earlier, on people are going to change jobs. That's a big one right now because we're going to lose a lot of people. And also the people that are willing to do us harm are a little smarter today than they were 3 years ago. They've now understood what has the biggest blast radius for our organizations, and they're starting to take advantage of that. I see that in the critical infrastructure space quite a bit. Your random ransomware operators, they're still operating their little gang, but they're starting to be more aware of what they're touching and learning when and how they can impact you most. And for a lot of corporations out there, that is the holiday season. That is a time when we have people out, we have people moving, and we have A lot of our corporations have calendar and fiscal year combined. So these next 4 weeks are vitally important. So they know when those things are happening, and they know when to be on the lookout for pieces and parts. And everybody in our industry knows the Friday of a holiday is always the most active time for cybersecurity breaches. So that's something we just have to prepare for and have a new operating cadence around.
Well, and exactly to that point, Sean, a lot of companies have freezes in place this time of year. Retailers, don't touch my website because that needs to work right now, right? This is when we're going into the black. And so when vulnerabilities are discovered, it's really going to be really important to be able to close those gaps, as quickly as possible without interfering with the daily business at this time of year in particular.
Yeah, we've got a client actually in a Fortune 500 company, very large. They've taken this time because there is that shutdown window to do all their tabletops. So that's when they're bringing in their CFO and running through a ransomware exercise. They're bringing in their legal team, and they're choosing the holiday season to do it. And the trick with this one, and they were really, really smart, they're doing it around a holiday party. So actually they're doing the tabletop in the morning, the holiday party and happy hour in the afternoon, and then everyone goes and does their own thing. But that's attracting people in. It's giving them an opportunity to come in person and exercise that needed cybersecurity program. Just kind of fun.
Yeah, that's great points. And I'll be honest, it's you mentioned blast radius and trying to determine what, or at least bad actors are trying to determine what has the biggest impact. And I think there are several tools now that security teams can utilize within their own security stack that can help them determine what a blast radius looks like, specified with a particular asset, and then using that list to prioritize what vulnerabilities that they're patching and closing, right? And I think that's a critical tool and aspect of a security program. If you don't have, try and get, if you can afford it, go get it, because that will help your vulnerability management program and close the most critical vulnerabilities that you have. Because the most critical vulnerability may not be a high, it may be a medium that's associated with an asset that has other vulnerabilities or misconfigurations that could be more critical if exploited, right? So having understanding what that blast radius is and the attack path analysis, if you can get it, is I think crucial, a crucial part of the security stack if you can get it. So next question, and this, Sean, we'll go ahead and start off with you on this one, but operational technology and supply chains remain a huge target for threat actors. How do you protect these at a time when cyber readiness may be reduced?
Yeah, biggest thing we can do is that communication piece. We don't have a lot of time between now and those outage windows. We certainly don't have a lot of time between now and New Year's Eve. Is communicating with your operations people, understanding what's critical to them, what their timeline windows are, all those kind of things are vitally important. All too often, we don't have cybersecurity people bridging the aisle. I talked about physical security earlier, connecting to those physical security teams, connecting to your COO, to your plant operators at critical sites and saying, hey, we're here. Max, one of the things I think you do best is have a very physical presence in our company. You are consistently around. People know when they get a funny email to send it to you personally, which may or might not be the right policy, but knowing that security is friendly, knowing that security is an organization that can help protect you and the company is vitally important. And on the critical infrastructure side, now's the time to reach out to those folks, that COO, that plant operator, and say, hey, if you got something funny over the next 30 days, here's your process to go to, or come talk to me directly. We're here. We're a resource for you. Yeah,
and I have no issues with people sending messages to me directly if they get something funny. In fact, I got a few this morning, which is a good thing, right? I'm advocating for that. I'll steer them in the right direction. Jennifer, do you have anything that you want to add on that one?
I would just echo exactly what Sean said, and I think I've sent you a couple of emails directly myself that looked a little odd. So, but yeah, just communicating, making sure that folks know that you're here and available. You and your team are available to them at this time. But not just now, all year round. Now's a great time to cement relationships.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I think you both touched upon a very important thing for me. And I think that is security has to be open and approachable. Don't be in a culture of no. try and work with the business and the organization to make security work for the business. If you're approachable, people are going to be reaching out to you left and right to ask questions and making sure that you're involved versus, if you're very standoffish or not involved in the operations or trying to work with the business and be a business enabler, right? I think you're just a lot more open and people are more receptive to you being involved if you are a business enabler like that. So I appreciate your guys' both input on that. So as we continue through remote work, right? A lot of companies are still almost fully remote, and majority of companies I think are still fairly hybrid at this point. What security measures must be in place to protect access to facilities? I mean, we touched a lot about physical security up to this point. So, for example, an employee working remotely in Kansas City, but is accessing the network in Denver.
Yeah, your UEBA controls are going to be really important there. We talked about identity and how everybody's going to scatter. I think getting a good baseline, and if you can turn on some of that UEBA functionality, you don't have to roll it out. It doesn't have to be anything really intrusive. Making sure that thing's on and open, because then you can baseline who's going where and what are they doing from different locations. I think the other piece too falls on management. Checking in with your employees. Hey, I haven't camera on in 3 or 4 months. What are they doing? Or, hey, I see they're out for big tranche at a time. Or they only email at like 10:30 p.m., right? Getting an understanding on your people from a tool perspective, from a UEBA identity sphere, but then separately and also on the personnel level, right? Reaching out to your direct contacts and just saying, hey, how's it going, right? We don't do that a lot in cyber. We kind of just pretend everybody is a machine that can work from home and push through documentation and programs. It's not always the case. There's a lot of human element to that too.
Oh, and let me take that from a fully remote work standpoint. I've worked remote for the better part of 16 years through a number of jobs. And, I here in my home, this time of year, I might have more visitors. I might have family, visiting, staying with me. I need to treat my home office as a corporate office, lock my computer when I step away. I have dogs and I have been unplugging my keyboard. Maybe that's a stupid tiny little thing that, if someone approaches your computer, the keyboard doesn't work, it might slow them down or move on to something else. I unplug my keyboard so that my dogs don't accidentally do something I don't want them to do if I am going to step away for a moment. And locking your cabinets, shutting your door, locking your office door. Whenever those things are available to you, think about your office as corporate space and make sure that those policies that are in place that we have all agreed to, we are keeping top of mind this time of year. Also, if I go visit an office, the team up in Seattle, I'm in Washington State. The team up in Seattle is having a holiday party and I want to go join. Maybe I forgot my badge and somebody says, "Oh, Jen, sure, come on in. Don't swipe your badge if you forgot it. That's okay." That's not okay, right? Everyone should be swiping badges. Everybody should be following policy, and keeping those things in mind as well. When it's not just folks that are working hybrid, but the remote team that might be coming in and doing more social events or taking part in company events, team meetings during this time of year that aren't usually there. You might have new faces you don't recognize, and feel free to question those faces if you don't know and aren't sure.
Yeah, and it's interesting. Both of you guys brought up physical security, and I think that's probably a topic that for a lot of companies that are hybrid or remote, maybe not focus a lot on. And Sean, you'd mentioned UEBA, and I think that's a crucial aspect of a good security program is the integration of the physical security or badging system, et cetera, into your cybersecurity ticketing system, SIM, et cetera. So that way you can correlate that data. And I think it's extremely important. And so, while we're touching on physical security, let's go back to insider threat and risk. And, Sean, you had touched about UEBA and some of the physical security things. What comments do you have on insider threat and risk associated with that?
Yeah, insider threat's going to be kind of the holiday theme, unfortunately, because what we mentioned earlier, people changing jobs, and actually Oh, and now I think about it, my kids were watching Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer last night, right? Well, that whole story is insider threat, right? That is third-party risk management. Actually, any movie I've seen around Santa's workshop there's never been a bad guy that wasn't the internal elf that went bad. The Grinch that way. Frosty the Snowman, maybe. Oh, Die Hard. Yes, Die Hard's whole thing is insider risk. Die Hard 2 is a inside airport operator turns crazy and goes and does dangerous stuff. So I think okay, that's funny, right? I guess. And is Die Hard or Die Hard 2 a Christmas movie or not? Okay, I don't want to open that.
They are
That was
Christmas
all last
movie.
year's debate.
They are
Christmas movie. Totally.
Yeah, absolutely Christmas movie.
So yeah, insider threat's a big one. And now is going to be a time where a lot of things shift. Everything shifts. And getting a good handle on what that looks like. And then you can't do anything about it this year, right? Turn on your logging tools, be attentive to it, right? But leveraging those things to go plan for 2024 and getting enough data so that you can go out there and say, hey, this was an issue. This is what we saw. We saw John McClane doing this. This was the security components around that. Building a narrative so you can roll into the next year with a lot of sound foundation around what you want to do for third-party risk management. How do you want to get your vendors in play? How do you want to get your trusted employees in play? How do we want to expand that program out and using some of the lessons from right now where people scatter to hone in on those use cases and go find budget? That's my advice.
Well, let me carry that metaphor forward for privacy. I did a little homework because I knew you were going to mention Die Hard. But today is the 24th anniversary of the release of The Talented Mr. Ripley, which is about identity theft. And so this is a time of year when, we need to make sure that we're protecting our data, knowing who we're sharing data with, and keeping an eye out on any transactions, activities, phone calls, emails that are maybe not as, the funny ones that we need to send to Max, right? So, just that insider threat, identity theft, all of these things that are just heightened, and with artificial intelligence driving so many good and risky things and activities in the world right now. Just a acceleration of these things that we're really seeing this year. So to keep our heads on a swivel and try to be safe.
Yeah, I appreciate both of your guys' inputs. And, one would also argue that Gremlins is not a Christmas movie, but I think it's a Christmas movie too. Somebody made that argument last night. It's like, no, that is a Christmas movie too.
Clark Griswold got mad about a bonus and kidnapped his boss.
All right, so thank you both for attending the LinkedIn Live session with me. And, I appreciate the fantastic conversation on how both businesses and individuals can protect themselves both during the holiday season and after. If you have any questions after the fact, please contact us through optiv.com, and we'll make sure that we get back to you with any questions that you may have or comments for that matter. And thank you for joining Optiv for our LinkedIn Live session. And I hope that you and yours have a great holiday season. Thank you very much.